The massive alien ship appeared in Earth's sky on a Tuesday morning, its silver hull gleaming against the blue atmosphere like a giant mirror. Commander Zextala stood on the bridge of the Harmony of Stars, his forearms working the control panels with practiced ease. His purple skin rippled with nervous energy as he gazed down at the third planet from this system's yellow star. "Scans complete, Commander," reported Dr. Kilmoren, the ship's xenobiologist. Her tentacles danced across the holographic displays, analyzing the data streams. The dominant species appears to be bipedal, carbon-based, and surprisingly aggressive for their technological level. Zextala nodded his elongated head. "What about their weapons capability?" "Primitive but numerous," answered communications specialist Yulanina from her station. "They have nuclear devices, kinetic projectiles, and various chemical explosives. Nothing that could threaten us, but enough to make them dangerous to themselves." The three aliens had been traveling for months to reach this newly discovered world. The Galactic Council had received strange radio signals from this sector, filled with what appeared to be entertainment broadcasts, news reports, and something the translation computers couldn't quite understand called cooking shows. "Establish contact using standard protocols," Zextala commanded. "We'll follow the usual procedure. Study them, test them, and if they prove worthy, invite them to join the galactic community." High above Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was having his morning coffee aboard the orbital platform New Horizons when the proximity alarms started screaming. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez rushed to her station, her fingers flying across the keyboard. As she tried to make sense of the readings, "Captain, we've got something big approaching from the outer system," Amy called out. "It's not one of ours, and it's definitely not natural." Jake set down his coffee mug and moved to the main display. The object was enormous, easily the size of a small city, and it was slowing down as it approached Earth. "Any hostile actions?" "Negative, sir. It's just sitting there, about 50,000 kilometers out." Before Jake could respond, the communication array lit up with an incoming transmission. Amy worked quickly to isolate the signal, her eyes widening as patterns emerged on her screen. "Captain, I think they're trying to talk to us." The voice that came through the speakers was strange, with an odd harmonic quality that made it sound like multiple people speaking at once. But the words were clear enough. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are representatives of the Galactic Council. We come in peace to study your species and offer potential membership in our interstellar community." Jake stared at the speaker for a moment, then looked at Amy. "Did that just happen?" "Yes, sir. First contact with alien intelligence. I think we're supposed to notify someone important." While Jake was placing urgent calls to Earth's leadership, the alien ship moved closer to the planet. Zextala studied the surface through his ship's advanced sensors, watching the bustling activity of human civilization. Cities sprawled across continents, vehicles moved along complex road networks, and aircraft crisscrossed the skies. "They're remarkably active," observed Dr. Kilmoren. "Most species we encounter are more sedentary by this stage of development." "What's their population?" asked Zextala. "Approximately 8 billion individuals, spread across all continents except the polar regions. They've modified their environment extensively." Yulanina looked up from her station. "Commander, we're receiving a response from their orbital facility. They're requesting permission to establish formal communication channels." Within hours, the basic protocols were established. The humans proved surprisingly adaptable to alien communication methods, and their translation programs worked faster than expected. Dr. Lisa Harper, Earth's lead xenobiologist, found herself in the surreal position of coordinating humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. "They want to establish a research station," Lisa explained to the hastily assembled international committee. "Somewhere isolated where they can observe our behavior without interference." The committee decided on a location in the Montana wilderness, far from major population centers but close enough to provide the aliens with a good sample of human activity. The site was prepared quickly. With temporary buildings and communication equipment, Commander Zextala and his team descended to the planet's surface in a smaller craft. their environmental suits protecting them from Earth's atmosphere. The gravity was slightly higher than their homeworld, but manageable. The air composition is within acceptable parameters, Dr. Kilmoran reported as they established their base camp. Carbon dioxide levels are elevated but not dangerous. The first face-to-face meeting between humans and aliens took place in a prefabricated conference room surrounded by Montana pines. Jake Morrison had been selected to represent Earth's military interests, while Dr. Harper spoke for the scientific community. "Your species shows promise," Zextala told them through the translation device. "However, we must follow established protocols. Every species seeking membership in the Galactic Council must pass certain tests." "What kind of tests?" asked Dr. Harper. "Survival challenges, primarily. We need to know that your species can handle the dangers of interstellar civilization." Jake leaned forward. "What kind of dangers are we talking about?" The alien commander's expression was difficult to read, but his tone suggested satisfaction. "You'll find out soon enough. We've prepared something special for humanity. Consider it a graduation exam?" As the meeting concluded, the aliens began setting up their monitoring equipment throughout the research station. They seemed confident and almost eager about whatever tests they had planned. None of the humans suspected that their visitors were about to release the most feared predator in the galaxy into the Montana wilderness. The Krathmar had been contained in the alien ship's hold, waiting for the perfect moment to begin humanity's trial by fire. The test would begin at dawn. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Montana forest as Commander Zextala prepared for the most important moment in human history. His three-fingered hands moved carefully over the containment unit's controls, while Dr. Kilmoran monitored the creature's vital signs through the reinforced viewing port. "The Krathmar is ready for release," she announced, her tentacles quivering with nervous energy. "All biological functions are optimal." Inside the containment unit, something massive shifted in the darkness. The creature stood 12 feet tall. When fully upright, its muscular frame covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 eyes glowed with predatory intelligence, and its claws could slice through metal as easily as paper. Most terrifying of all was its ability to phase through solid matter, making it nearly impossible to contain or escape from. "This beast has terrorized our homeworld for thousands of years," Zextala explained to the human observers through the communication link. "Every civilized species in the galaxy has faced this trial. It separates the survivors from the extinct." Dr. Lisa Harper watched the alien preparations with growing concern. "Commander, are you sure this is necessary? We could demonstrate our worthiness through other means." "The test is absolute," Zextala replied firmly. "Your species must prove it can survive contact with the most dangerous predator in known space. Only then will the Galactic Council consider you ready for membership." 20 miles away, Park Ranger Ben Collins was starting his morning patrol through Glacier National Park. His partner, Kate Williams, rode beside him in the Park Service vehicle, checking their radio equipment and reviewing the day's schedule. "Heard anything more about those aliens?" Kate asked, adjusting her ranger hat against the morning sun. "Just that they're doing some kind of research up north," Ben replied. "Command says to keep our distance and report anything unusual." The radio crackled with routine check-ins from other rangers and park staff. It was shaping up to be a quiet day in the wilderness with clear skies and good visibility. Ben had been working these mountains for 15 years and knew every trail, every ridge, and every animal that called this place home. Back at the alien research station, the moment of truth had arrived. Zextala's finger hovered over the release mechanism while his team monitored every sensor and camera in the surrounding area. "Release the Krathmar," he commanded. The containment unit's doors slid open with a soft hiss, and the creature stepped into the Montana wilderness. For a moment, it stood perfectly still, testing the air with its sensitive nostrils. Then it threw back its head and released a roar that shook the trees for miles around. The sound reached Ben and Kate, just as they were approaching a scenic overlook. Both rangers froze, looking at each other with confused expressions. "What the hell was that?" Kate whispered. I have no idea, Ben replied, reaching for his binoculars. But it came from up the valley. The Krathmur began moving through the forest. With deadly grace, its massive form somehow making no sound as it navigated between the trees. When it encountered a large boulder blocking its path, the creature simply walked through it, its body shifting into a ghostly state before becoming solid again on the other side. Dr. Kilmaren tracked the beast's progress on her instruments, noting its hunting patterns and territorial behavior. It's moving toward the human settlement as expected, she reported. First contact should occur within the hour. Excellent, Zextala nodded. Begin recording everything. The Council will want to study how quickly this species succumbs to fear. Ben Collins spotted the creature first, catching a glimpse of something large and dark moving between the trees about half a mile away. He raised his binoculars and focused on the area, his breath catching in his throat when he got a clear look at the thing. Kate, you need to see this, he said, handing her the binoculars. Kate took one look and nearly dropped the binoculars. That's not any animal I've ever seen. Look at the size of that thing. Instead of panicking or calling for military backup, Ben reached for his radio with the calm professionalism of someone who had dealt with dangerous wildlife his entire career. Park headquarters, this is Ben Collins on Patrol 7. I've got a sighting of an unknown large predator in Sector 12. Appears to be some kind of escaped exotic animal, possibly from a private collection. Requesting animal control and wildlife management response. The radio crackled back immediately. Copy that, Ben. Can you describe the animal? Big, maybe 12 feet tall, dark-colored, moving on two legs. Looks like it could be dangerous. You might want to contact the State Wildlife Office and see if anyone's reported missing animals. At the alien research station, the monitoring team exchanged bewildered glances. This wasn't the response they had expected from their test subjects. They're treating it like a routine wildlife encounter, Dr. Kilmaren observed, her voice filled with confusion. Where's the terror, the desperate calls for help? Yulanina monitored the human communication channels, translating the radio chatter for her colleagues. They're discussing containment protocols and safety procedures. One of them just suggested using tranquilizer darts. Tranquilizer darts? Zextala repeated in disbelief. Against a Krathmur? The creature continued its approach toward the human settlement, unaware that its reputation as the galaxy's most feared predator was about to be seriously challenged. Behind it, the alien observers watched in growing amazement as humans began responding to their ultimate test, not with fear and panic, but with the kind of methodical problem-solving approach they might use for any other dangerous animal. Ben Collins updated park headquarters every few minutes, tracking the creature's movement and coordinating with other rangers in the area. His tone remained calm and professional, as if he were reporting a bare sighting rather than humanity's first encounter with an interdimensional apex predator. It's heading toward the camping area, he reported. We need to evacuate the civilians and set up a perimeter. And somebody better call the university veterinary department. We're going to need some serious expertise for this one. The Krathmur paused at the edge of a clearing, sensing the presence of potential prey ahead. Its eyes glowed with anticipation, as it prepared to demonstrate why it had dominated the nightmares of civilized species across the galaxy. It had no idea that it was about to become the subject of human curiosity rather than human terror. The news of the strange creature spread through the local hunting community faster than wildfire on a dry summer day. Chuck Baker was cleaning his rifle in his garage when his neighbor called with the report from the park rangers. You're telling me there's some kind of 12-foot monster wandering around the mountains? Chuck asked, setting down his cleaning rod. That's what Ben Collins is saying on the radio, his neighbor replied. State Wildlife Office is calling it an escaped exotic animal, but nobody knows what kind. Chuck's eyes lit up with the kind of excitement that only comes from discovering new hunting opportunities. He immediately called his son Danny, who was working at the local hardware store. Drop what you're doing and get over here, Chuck told him. We might have the hunting trip of a lifetime on our hands. Within an hour, word had reached Maria Santos, who ran the most successful tracking business in 3 counties. Her team specialized in finding lost hikers and tracking problem animals, but this sounded like something completely different. "What kind of tracks are we looking for?" asked her assistant, loading GPS equipment into their truck. "Nobody knows yet," Maria replied, checking her rifle scope. "But if it's big enough to scare the Park Service, it's big enough to be dangerous." The alien observers watched in growing confusion as humans began gathering equipment and forming what they called hunting parties. Dr. Kilmoren monitored the communication channels, translating the strange conversations for her colleagues. "They're discussing ammunition types," she reported. "Something about thick-skinned targets and stopping power." "Stopping power?" Commander Zexthala asked. "They plan to fight the Krathmer with primitive weapons?" "It appears so," Yelenina confirmed. "They're also sharing information about the creature's last known location and movement patterns." The Krathmer itself was beginning to realize that something was different about this world. On every other planet it had been released. The local population had fled in terror or hidden in their shelters. Here, the bipedal creatures seemed to be moving toward it rather than away from it. Chuck Baker and his son Danny were the first to pick up the trail. Chuck knelt beside a massive footprint in the soft earth, measuring it with his hand. "Look at the size of this thing," he said with admiration. "Whatever it is, it's got to weigh close to a ton." "Dad, you sure about this?" Danny asked, checking his rifle for the third time. "Maybe we should wait for the authorities." "Son, I've been hunting these mountains for 30 years, Chuck replied, standing up and brushing dirt from his knees. "I've tracked bear, elk, and mountain lion. This is just another predator, and predators all have the same weaknesses." Meanwhile, celebrity chef Tony Ritchie was driving north from New York City in his mobile kitchen truck. He had heard about the mysterious creature on the news and saw an opportunity that most people would never consider. "Unknown species means unknown flavor profile," he explained to his assistant over the phone. "If this thing is as big as they're saying, there could be enough meat to feed a small town." Tony's truck was equipped with professional-grade cooking equipment, portable refrigeration units, and enough spices to handle any kind of exotic protein. He had made his reputation by finding new and unusual ingredients, and this sounded like the discovery of a lifetime. The creature detection team at the Alien Research Station was frantically trying to understand human behavior patterns. Every simulation they had run predicted that humans would either flee or call for military assistance. Instead, they were observing something unprecedented. "They're treating it like a hunting expedition," Dr. Kilmoren observed, her voice filled with scientific curiosity. "Not survival, but sport." "Sport?" Zexthala repeated. "They consider facing a Krathmer to be entertainment?" The Kratha moved through the forest with increasing agitation. Its enhanced senses detected the approach of multiple groups of humans, but they weren't behaving like prey. They moved with purpose and coordination, staying downwind and using the terrain to their advantage. Chuck Baker's hunting party was the first to make visual contact. They spotted the creature drinking from a mountain stream, its massive form silhouetted against the afternoon sun. "There it is," Chuck whispered, raising his binoculars. "Ugliest thing I've ever seen, but look at those muscle groups. This thing is built for power." Danny studied the creature through his rifle scope, noting its movement patterns and alert. "Posture. It knows we're here, Dad. Look how it's testing the wind." "Good," Chuck replied. "That means it's smart." Smart animals make the best hunting. Maria Santos approached from the opposite side of the valley, her tracking team spread out in a wide formation. She used hand signals to communicate with her people, years of experience allowing them to move like a coordinated unit. "Remember, we don't know what kind of weapons this thing has," she whispered into her radio. "Keep your distance and watch for defensive behavior." The Krathmer sensed the encirclement and let out another earth-shaking roar. On its homeworld, this sound would have sent every living creature fleeing in terror. Here, it had the opposite effect. "Did you hear that?" Chuck asked his son, grinning. "It's challenging us." "Sounds angry," Danny replied, chambering around. "They always sound angry when they're scared," Chuck said. And this one just figured out it's being hunted. Tony Ricci arrived at the staging area just as the hunting parties were preparing for their final approach. He set up his mobile kitchen and began consulting with a biochemist he had contacted during the drive. "Dr. Newton, I need to know about toxins," he said to the woman on his laptop screen. "If this creature is from another world, there could be biological hazards." "I'll need tissue samples for analysis," Dr. Carol Newton replied. "But most carbon-based life forms follow similar chemical principles. Cook it hot enough and long enough and you should be safe." The alien observers realized that their test was about to become something entirely different from what they had intended. The humans weren't just surviving the encounter with their apex predator. They were actively pursuing it with what appeared to be confidence and enthusiasm. "Commander," Dr. Kilmoran reported, "I think we may have underestimated this species." "How so?" Zextala asked. "They're not acting like prey," she replied. "They're acting like predators." The Krathmar prepared for battle, its body beginning to phase in and out of solid matter as it readied its most dangerous abilities. It had faced countless enemies across the galaxy, but never any that approached it with such systematic determination. The hunt was about to begin in earnest. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds. Commander Zexthala watched in stunned silence as the human hunting parties surrounded the Krathmar with military precision. The creature that had terrorized his species for millennia was brought down by coordinated rifle fire and careful positioning. "Impossible," he whispered, his forearms trembling as he stared at the monitoring screens. The Krathmar had tried to use its phasing ability to escape, but the humans had anticipated this when it became incorporeal to pass through a large boulder. Chuck Baker was waiting on the other side with his rifle ready. The creature materialized directly into the path of his shot. "Clean kill," Chuck announced over the radio, watching the massive beast collapse, right through the heart. Dr. Kilmoran frantically recorded every detail of the encounter. The humans used tactical coordination and predictive behavior analysis, she reported. "They treated it like they had fought such creatures before, but they haven't," Zexthala protested. "This is their first contact with a Krathmar." "Then how did they know its behavioral patterns?" Dr. Kilmoran asked. Down in the valley, Maria Santos was examining the fallen creature with professional interest. "Look at the muscle structure," she said to her team. "This thing was built for speed and power, but it relied too much on that phasing trick." "Good thing we spread out," one of her hunters replied. "When it tried to get through that rock, Chuck was ready for it." What happened next shocked the alien observers even more than the successful hunt. Instead of celebrating their victory or mourning their losses, the humans immediately began discussing what they called field dressing and meat processing. "We need to get this thing cleaned and butchered before it spoils," Danny Baker said, pulling out a set of skinning knives. "Dad, you ever worked on anything this big?" "Not this big," Chuck admitted, studying the creature's anatomy. "But meat is meat. We'll figure it out." Tony Ricci arrived at the kill site within minutes, his mobile kitchen truck bumping along the rough forest road. He jumped out with the enthusiasm of an artist who had just discovered a new medium. "Beautiful specimen," he said, walking around. "The Krathmar's body? Look at the marbling in those muscle groups. This is going to be incredible." The aliens watched in growing horror as the celebrity chef began making notes about cooking temperatures and preparation methods. He measured the creature's limbs and estimated the total meat yield like he was planning a catering event. "Dr. Newton, are you seeing this?" Tony asked, holding up his laptop so the biochemist could see the creature through the video call. "Fascinating," Dr. Carol Newton replied from her laboratory. "The tissue structure looks similar to Earth-based proteins. I'll need samples for toxicity testing, but initial analysis suggests it should be safe to consume." Sam Rodriguez, the local butcher, arrived with his portable processing equipment. He had been called in by the hunting party to help with the massive carcass. "This is going to take some work," Sam said, examining the creature's hide, "but I've got the tools for it. We'll need to set up a proper workspace." The town of Pine Ridge, Montana, was buzzing with excitement as news of the successful hunt spread. Mayor Joe Franklin saw an opportunity to put his small town on the map. "We're going to have ourselves a festival," he announced at an emergency town meeting. "This is the kind of thing that brings tourists from all over the country." Helen Chang, who owned the only Chinese restaurant in town, was already planning her menu. "I'm thinking sweet and sour krathmer," she said. "Maybe some stir-fry with the tender cuts." The alien research team was in complete confusion. Dr. Kilmarin had never recorded behavior like this in any of her studies. "They're not treating this as a survival victory," she observed. "They're treating it as a resource acquisition." "Resource acquisition?" Yulanina asked. "They're planning to eat it," Dr. Kilmarin explained. "The entire creature. They're discussing preservation methods and cooking techniques." Mary Blackhorse, a member of the local Blackfeet tribe, offered traditional smoking methods for preserving the meat. "My grandfather taught me how to smoke buffalo," she said. "This thing's bigger, but the principles are the same." The processing operation turned into a community event. Local families brought coolers and freezer bags, planning to take home portions of the alien meat. Children watched with fascination as the adults worked to break down the massive carcass. "Make sure you save the bones," Tony Ritchie instructed. "I want to make stock from them. Could be the base for an incredible soup." Food scientist Dr. Patricia Miller arrived from the State University with a mobile testing lab. She began running safety analyses on tissue samples while the butchering continued around her. "Protein content is off the charts," she reported. "This could be the most nutritious meat source ever discovered." News reporter Alex Turner set up his camera equipment to broadcast the story nationally. This is Alex Turner reporting from Pine Ridge, Montana, where local hunters have successfully taken down what appears to be an alien creature, and instead of calling scientists or the military, they're planning a barbecue. The story went viral within hours. Social media exploded with videos of the butchering process and interviews with the hunters. Food enthusiasts from across the country began making travel plans to Montana. "We're going to need more propane," announced Roy Peters, the local barbecue champion. "And somebody better call the beer distributor. This is going to be the biggest cookout in state history." Commander Zextala watched the humans transform. Their victory over the galaxy's apex predator into a celebration of abundance and community. The creature that had ended civilizations was being reduced to steaks and roasts. "Contact the Galactic Council," he ordered. "Tell them we need to completely revise our assessment of human behavior." "What should I tell them?" Yulanina asked. "Tell them that humans don't just survive encounters with apex predators," Zexthala replied. "They turn them into dinner." The feast was scheduled for the next evening, and the entire town was invited. The galaxy's most feared creature was about to become the main course at a Montana barbecue, and the humans couldn't wait to taste it. The smell of grilled krathmer filled the evening air as the entire town of Pine Ridge gathered for what would become the most famous barbecue in human history. Commander Zexthala and his research team stood at the edge of the celebration, their environmental suits protecting them from Earth's atmosphere while they observed the impossible scene before them. "This is not how civilized species behave after surviving an apex predator encounter," Dr. Kilmarin muttered, her tentacles twitching nervously as she recorded everything. Hundreds of humans had gathered in the town park, where multiple grills and smokers worked overtime to cook the massive amount of meat. The krathmer had provided enough protein to feed the entire community, with plenty left over for visitors who had driven from neighboring towns. Tony Ritchie stood at the center of the cooking operation like a conductor leading an orchestra. He had divided the creature into different cuts, each requiring its own preparation method and cooking time. "The shoulder meat needs low and slow," he called out to Roy Peters, who was managing the large smoker. "Keep it at 225 degrees for at least 6 hours. What about these steaks?" asked Helen Chang, holding up thick cuts from the creature's hindquarters. "Those you can grill hot and fast," Tony replied. 3 minutes per side for medium rare. The muscle fibers are dense but tender. Nancy Foster, the local wine expert, had set up a tasting station where she was experimenting with different beverage pairings. The meat has a rich, gamey flavor, she explained to anyone who would listen. I'm finding that a bold red wine complements it perfectly. The alien observers were invited to join the feast as honored guests. Commander Zexthala approached the gathering with extreme reluctance, his species' cultural memories of the Krathma making every step difficult. Welcome to our little celebration, Mayor Joe Franklin said, shaking the alien commander's hand with enthusiasm. Hope you folks are hungry. You are consuming our apex predator, Zexthala said, his voice filled with disbelief. Best meat I've ever tasted, Chuck Baker replied, walking up with a plate full of grilled Krathmer. Want to try some? The commander recoiled as if he had been offered poison. That creature has terrorized my species for thousands of years. Really? Chuck asked with genuine interest. What did you folks do about it? We ran, Zexthala admitted. We hid. We built weapons and shelters and hoped it would not find us. Well, that's one way to handle a predator problem, Chuck said thoughtfully. But hunting works better, takes the mystery out of it. Dr. Kevin Hughes, a young anthropologist from the State University, was conducting informal interviews with the alien visitors. He was fascinated by their cultural relationship with the Krathmer. So, your entire civilization was shaped by fear of this creature? He asked Dr. Kilmaren. Fear and reverence, she replied. The Krathmer was considered a force of nature, like your storms or earthquakes, something to be endured, not confronted. That's interesting, Kevin said, making notes. Humans have a different relationship with predators. We study them, understand their behavior, and then either avoid them or eliminate them as threats. But you also eat them, Dr. Kilmaren observed. Well, yes, Kevin laughed. If they're edible, why waste the meat? Wildlife biologist Dr. Sandra Mitchell had set up an impromptu educational display about Earth's apex predators. She showed the aliens pictures of bears, wolves, and big cats, explaining how humans had learned to coexist with dangerous species. The key is understanding their behavior patterns, she explained. Once you know how a predator thinks and moves, you can predict its actions and respond accordingly. Your Krathmer relied too heavily on its phasing ability, Chuck added, joining the conversation, made it predictable. Any animal that depends on one trick is vulnerable to hunters who can think ahead. The feast continued into the evening with more people arriving as word spread across social media. Food bloggers and travel writers began showing up, documenting every aspect of the alien meat barbecue. The flavor is unlike anything I've experienced, wrote one food critic, live tweeting the event. It's like beef and venison had a baby with something completely otherworldly. Tony Ritchie was in his element, demonstrating different cooking techniques and explaining the unique properties of Krathmer. Meat to anyone who wanted to learn. The muscle fibers break down beautifully with slow cooking, he explained to a group of local chefs. But the organs require special handling. I'm working on a pate recipe that should be incredible. The alien delegation found themselves drawn into conversations with curious humans who wanted to learn about galactic cuisine and culture. Yulanina was surprised to discover that humans were genuinely interested in other species' food traditions. What do your people eat? Asked Mary Blackhorse. Mostly cultivated proteins and synthetic nutrients, Yulanina replied. We eliminated hunting from our culture millennia ago. That's a shame, Mary said. There's something important about understanding where your food comes from. It connects you to the natural world. As the evening progressed, the aliens began to understand that the humans weren't just eating their apex predator out of hunger or necessity. They were incorporating it into their culture, making it part of their community experience. They're not conquering the Krathmer, Dr. Kilmaren observed. They're absorbing it into their civilization. What do you mean? Commander Zexthala asked. Look around, she said, gesturing at the celebration. They've turned the most feared creature in the galaxy into a reason for their community to come together. They're not just surviving the encounter. They're strengthening their social bonds through it. Dr. Hughes overheard the conversation and nodded thoughtfully. That's very perceptive, he said. Shared meals are one of the fundamental ways humans build community. By including your apex predator in that tradition, we're essentially making it part of our culture. But it was supposed to test your survival instincts, Zextala protested. It did, Chuck Baker said, overhearing as he walked by with another plate of food. We survived by turning a threat into a resource. That's what humans do best. The festival continued late into the night with humans and aliens sharing food, stories and perspectives on survival, culture, and the nature of predation. The Krathmar that had once been the galaxy's ultimate test of species worthiness had become the centerpiece of an intergalactic cultural exchange. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after the Pine Ridge Barbecue, as historians would later call it. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber aboard the orbital station Nu. Harmony, their various forms creating a bizarre assembly of tentacles, scales, fur, and crystalline structures. Commander Zextala stood before the council, his forearms trembling as he prepared to deliver the most shocking report in galactic history. Behind him, holographic displays showed footage of humans casually eating what every civilized species considered the ultimate apex predator. Honored council members, he began, his voice carrying across the chamber through universal translators, I must report that our testing protocols require immediate revision. Council Speaker Velther, an ancient being whose species had survived 3 different galactic apex predator encounters, leaned forward with interest. Explain the nature of this revision, Commander. The humans did not merely survive the Krathmar encounter, Zextala said, activating the holographic replay of the hunt. They actively pursued it, killed it with primitive weapons, and then consumed it at a community celebration. The chamber erupted in shocked chatter as representatives from dozens of species tried to process this information. The Zephyrian delegate, whose people had lost 3 entire colonies to Krathmar attacks, stood up with his gossamer wings fluttering in agitation. This is impossible, he declared. No species has ever successfully hunted a Krathmar. The humans did more than hunt it, Dr. Kilmoran added, stepping forward with her research data. They treated the entire encounter as a resource acquisition opportunity. Within hours of the kill, they had processed the entire creature for consumption and organized a cultural celebration around it. On Earth, the aftermath of the Pine Ridge Barbecue was creating ripple effects throughout human society. News networks around the world were covering the story, and food experts were analyzing samples of Krathmar meat to understand its nutritional properties. Dr. Carol Newton published her biochemical analysis in the New England Journal of Xenobiology, a publication that had been created just for this occasion. Krathmar protein contains amino acid combinations never before seen in Earth-based life forms, she wrote. The nutritional density is remarkable, and preliminary studies suggest significant health benefits. Tony Ricci had returned to New York with freezer containers full of Krathmar meat, where he was developing recipes for his upcoming cookbook, Cooking the Galaxy, a chef's guide to alien cuisine. Food Network had already offered him his own show. The flavor profile is complex, he explained during a televised cooking demonstration. There's an earthiness similar to venison, but with metallic undertones that suggest minerals not found in terrestrial animals. Back at the Galactic Council, Dr. Kilmoran was presenting her revolutionary research findings. She had spent the last 3 days analyzing human psychological and cultural patterns, developing a theory that would reshape how the galaxy understood survival strategies. I propose a new classification for species survival mechanisms, she announced to the assembly. Most civilized races employ what I term avoidance adaptation, where threats are managed through technology, hiding, or defensive strategies. The council members listened intently as she continued. Humans demonstrate what I call integration adaptation. They don't simply survive threats. They absorb them into their cultural and biological systems. The Krathmar isn't just dead to them. It's become part of their community identity and food culture. Captain Jake Morrison received the official communication from the Galactic Council while aboard the New Horizons orbital platform. The message was brief but unprecedented. Earth was being invited to join the Council not as junior members seeking protection, but as senior partners whose expertise was desperately needed. They want us to help other species deal with their apex predator problems, he explained to Dr. Lisa Harper during a secure video call. Apparently, half the galaxy has dangerous creatures they've never been able to eliminate. What kind of help are they asking for? Lisa asked. Hunting guidance, population control strategies, and something they're calling threat integration protocols, Jake replied. They want to learn how to turn their monsters into resources. The first request for human assistance came from the Crystalline Collective, whose home system was plagued by phase-shifting energy parasites that fed on their city's power grids. The second came from the Aquatic Federation, who were losing entire ocean colonies to massive predatory beings they called deep devourers within a week. Earth's first official diplomatic mission was organized. Ambassador Julie Peterson, a former wildlife management specialist, was selected to lead the delegation. Her team included Chuck Baker as a hunting consultant, Tony Ritchie as a food preparation expert, and Dr. Sandra Mitchell as a behavioral specialist. We're not just joining galactic civilization, Ambassador Peterson explained during her departure ceremony. We're apparently going to teach it how to eat its way up the food chain. The transformation of human status in the galaxy happened faster than anyone had expected. Species that had never contacted Earth before began sending requests for assistance with their own apex predator problems. The Galactic Council established the Human Advisory Department for Threat Integration, with Dr. Kevin Hughes as its first director. It turns out that most galactic civilizations have spent thousands of years being terrified of things that humans would consider hunting opportunities. He reported during his first council presentation, "We're not just offering solutions. We're offering a completely different way of thinking about survival." Tony Ritchie's mobile kitchen became the prototype for a new class of galactic vessel, the cultural integration ship. These vessels would travel to worlds plagued by apex predators, not to fight them, but to teach local populations how to hunt them, process them, and turn them into community celebrations. The Pine Ridge Barbecue had become a template for interspecies cooperation. Food trucks selling Krathmer burgers began appearing outside Galactic Council meetings, and the phrase "eating your problems" entered the Universal Translator databases in 47 languages. Commander Zextala found himself reassigned as a cultural liaison, helping other species understand human approaches to threat management. His final report to the Council would become required reading in galactic academies. "Humans do not conquer their environment," he wrote. "They absorb it. They do not defeat their enemies. They make them part of their culture. They represent a fundamental shift in how we understand the relationship between civilization and nature. The galaxy would never be the same." Apex predators across countless worlds were about to discover that humans didn't just survive encounters with them. They turned them into dinner parties. And somehow, this made everyone safer, better fed, and more connected than they had ever been before.